Hey, Bonnie Vista Baptist Church and friends checking in today. This is a quick update for January the 13th. Just a reminder that we don't have any in-person services for the month of January. In fact, we don't even have small groups meeting in the church during this month. We are hoping to start some in-person services, perhaps in February, and welcome some small groups back into the building in that month as well. But stay tuned. We're keeping an eye on the restrictions. We're keeping an eye on a number of things, seeing what we are able to do together. So stay tuned, watch for the details as we move toward that time. But there are still great ways to stay connected, and I encourage you to take the initiative to remain connected with one another. If you're thinking about someone comes to mind, God puts that person in your brain, pray for them, and maybe even just give them a call, send them a text, send them an email, just let them know, hey, I'm thinking about you, praying for you today. Is there any way that I can serve you? That's how we build community together, even during this pandemic season. There are other ways that we can connect. Tonight, we have our little Bible study and prayer time, 7 p.m. You can get the Zoom link by going to our website. You register, you get the link, join us at 7. We don't take too long, but it's a great way to connect. And then on Sundays, right after the service, right around 11 a.m., we have our virtual coffee time. And the virtual coffee time is open to anyone. Again, go to the website, register for that. We spend about half an hour together, and it's a great chance to see one another's faces and catch up during that time. Of course, youth group is happening, and other ways that we can connect will be shared on our website, so check back there often. So thanks for checking in today. God bless you as you journey through this week. Remember to stay connected through prayer and by checking in on one another during this time. Thanks so much. Welcome to the first installment of Pastor Scott Attempts an Answer. These are some very short and simple answers to some questions that you have sent in to me. I know a number of you are binge reading the Bible. I want to encourage you to continue to do that. And as you do so, write down some of the questions, some of the interesting things you're discovering, and feel free to share them with me. Some of them I've already answered personally through email, but here are two today that I'm going to give a brief answer to, and then we can continue the conversation after this. The first one has to do with Noah and the ark. And the simple question is this: did the animals continue to breed while they were on the ark? Now, it's an interesting question. I have to admit, I've never been asked this question before. Why is this such an important thing to consider as we think about Noah and the ark? Well, first of all, Noah was on the ark longer than we often imagine. Often we talk about 40 days and 40 nights, and we think, well, that's not very long to be floating around on a big ship. But actually, 40 days and 40 nights was just the time that it rained. There's about another 150 days when he was bobbing around with all the animals on the ocean. And then there were days spent while he was waiting for dry land to appear. So altogether, those that kind of add these things up, they estimate about 370 days that Noah was on the ark with the animals. So you can imagine if the animals get a little frisky during that time, they could produce a lot of babies, and that could be a big problem for Noah. So I think that's where this question is coming from. Also, just the sheer number of animals that would have been on the ark, according to the story. Some people who kind of add these things up, they estimate between 7,000 and 16,000 animals to account for, two of each kind and those kind of things that are in the biblical story. So we're talking about a significant issue that Noah would have to address. So how did he do it? Well, we're not actually told in Scripture, but we can use a bit of logic and think this thing through just a little bit. If I were Noah, here's what I would have done. I would have kept the boys and the girls in separate pens, just like they tried to do in Bible college. That didn't work so well in Bible college, but it would have worked for Noah. I'm absolutely certain of it. And here's why I know it would have worked. When I was about 10 years old, I had 2 bunny rabbits. We went to the pet store and we got 2 beautiful baby bunnies, and we asked the professional at the pet store to make sure and give us 2 boy bunnies. So after a quick check and inspection, the professional said, here are your 2 baby boy bunnies. But he was wrong on one of the bunnies. And so pretty soon our 2 bunnies became 9 bunnies. And so what did we do to make sure that never happened again? We gave the boy bunny and the girl bunny separate rooms. Now, I'm kind of joking with you a little bit on this one, but it's an interesting question, and I think that might have been a solution that you could have looked at for good old Noah as he was floating around with all those animals on the ark. Feel free to come back at me on that one if you have another bit of logic or insight into that story. Okay, the next one gets a little darker, a little more serious, and it has to do with Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. The Noah story you can find in Genesis chapter 5 through 10, and the Lot with Sodom, you can find that in Genesis chapter 19. And in fact, I'm going to turn to that. So here's the backstory. 3 divine visitors came along and encountered Abram. And Abram is the epitome of hospitality, of the culture of hospitality at the time. He goes out of his way to invite these 3 guests into his dwelling place, provides a great meal for them, and he shows us what hospitality is supposed to look like. Now, 2 of those visitors go into Sodom to warn Lot and his family to get out of Dodge because the fire is about to descend on Sodom. But when they get down to Sodom, the city of Sodom does not treat those 2 guests with hospitality like Abraham did. Now, Lot attempts to treat them with hospitality. And part of the rule of hospitality is that if a stranger comes into your home, you are responsible for their very lives. And so the men of the city of Sodom, they surround Lot, who is actually a foreigner. He's actually an outsider, even though he sits in the city gates, which is a position of influence, but he's seen as a foreigner. They surround the house of Lot, and they want to do mean and nasty things with the visitors that have come under his shelter. Instead, Lot comes up with a very strange suggestion. I'm going to read it for you in Genesis 19, verse 6. Lot went outside to meet with them, that's the men of the city of Sodom, and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them what you like. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." Wow. This is one of those occasions when the Bible gives an example that we're not supposed to follow. And it's very dark and very twisted. How do we make sense of this? How does Lot offer his 2 daughters to these men? Part of it is the law of hospitality. The men are under his roof. Part of it is the understanding of Lot that his daughters were simply part of his possession, and so he was able to do with them as he wanted. But part of it is just sin. It's just the basis of twistedness and sin in society. But here's where we want to back up a little bit and see what the story is trying to tell us. And we see that by comparing the situation with Abraham and the situation with Lot and Sodom. The contrast that we're meant to pick up on is just as Abraham practiced godly hospitality, so Sodom practiced inhospitality in an ungodly way, and we're meant to draw on that contrast. In fact, we read about the sin of Sodom in Ezekiel, and I'm just going to read that passage for you. Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 49. Listen carefully to the sin of Sodom. "Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and the needy." So this story is meant to highlight the sin of Sodom because we've often talked about the 2 main commands in Scripture. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, which means the 2 great sins in the Bible: idolatry, not loving God, and inhospitality, not loving your neighbor. So Lot did not do a godly thing in offering his daughters, but the whole part of the story is to show the depth of depravity of Sodom in forgetting to take care of the poor, of the stranger, of those who are underfed. That's a lesson for us today. Well, keep sending in your questions and we'll kind of tackle them a little bit and give a bit of a direction for thought. Always happy to continue the conversation as we read through the Bible together. Thanks so much.